Brie, Flora, thank you so much for virtually joining us. We really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, no problem.
So, Brie, tell us about your business and how you got started with all this.
Sure. So I tend to call myself just a independent artist, jeweler maker. So I studied jewelry and metalsmithing alongside art education as my undergraduate degree. So I got 2 degrees, and I did that up at Mass Art in Boston, Massachusetts. So I've been doing it for a little while, but that's kind of how I got to be where I am now, which is teaching some workshops on the side, but really I'm focusing right now on trying to build up my following and have a e-commerce store online, especially with COVID and stuff this year. I haven't been traveling. So yeah, I'm a jeweler maker and that's what I do.
So, I guess it's safe to say that you've always been passionate about art.
Yeah, since I was a little kid, I went to Mass Art thinking I was gonna do illustration, and then I got into printmaking. Um, Kind of freaked out there for a minute, and so I switched to art education. And when you're in that department, they have you do like two 2Ds, two 3Ds, some media courses, so you kind of get to put your, put a couple different hats on, and that's how I found jewelry and metalsmithing, and I kind of totally fell in love with that, but didn't want to, kick the education to the side. So I just decided to finish both. And I think it was a good decision, helpful in the end. So,
Definitely. So, did you ever think, looking back, that you would be pursuing your passion and making a living doing what you love?
I mean, I always hoped, but there's always like reality that sets in that's like, for creatives, I think that, you're an entrepreneur, so there's a business side of it that of course nobody necessarily, sets off from the beginning being super excited about the business side. But I've learned to love different aspects of that. But it's been a huge learning curve for me over the past probably 5 years of just, I love making, but then, you gotta get that out to people and like marketing. And so that's been a bit different for me. But yeah, I've always wanted to do something creative and make a living off of it. So
So, by any metric, you are an entrepreneur and an artist. Do you see those two
yeah,
roles as one and the same or sharing similar aspects?
it's a question I'm thinking about a lot myself right now. This past year for everyone has been very hard and different. And for me, I think, I'm not changing the idea of making a living off of art, but it's just what route and direction I want to take things. So a lot of times I battle with, how those two things stand together, like my creative side and my business side. I definitely think I wouldn't say that they feel the same to me, but I'm learning how to like weave them together a little bit more smoothly. I don't know if that's like a weird artsy answer, but yeah, it's like some days I can't even look at my computer. I don't want to answer emails. I just don't have it in me. And I just have to make, whether it's mistakes or projects I'm working on or commissions or orders. And then other days I'm so in it, I'm like, yeah, I need to get this done. And I put the art to the side and it's all business that day. But it's definitely a balance that I'm learning to um, do a little bit better.
So, pivoting to the pandemic, obviously the pandemic has really upended a lot of businesses, especially artists. How has the COVID crisis impacted you as an artist and an entrepreneur?
Definitely pretty hard. I am lucky that I have some, support from loved ones, but that only goes so far. I had over 10 craft shows canceled this year, which is almost half of my year, if not more of that. And then that would probably have turned out to be more, but I stopped applying to shows because shows were shutting down. So I was already in 10 shows and those 10 shows got canceled, but it would have probably been even more. And then there's other things like artist conventions that I would have been doing pop-ups at, and having work in. So all of that got canceled. And I'm only probably in my third full year of just doing this, not even. I've worked part-time for other companies for a while. So I don't think I was as prepared. Well, no one was prepared, but I definitely was not prepared to have that much of a loss. So, between trying to get unemployment as a self-employed person, which is extremely difficult, and I did apply to a couple local like COVID support grants, which I got a couple, but nothing huge. So it's been really hard, but I definitely just turned to Instagram pretty hardcore. And I have a really good family and following on Instagram. So that has kind of pulled me through that and teaching online. So reaching out to places I've taught in the past that were transitioning, and just as hard as that was, and none of us really knowing how teaching online was going to go, I just kind of threw myself into it, and I had to adapt with what this year was. So it's been okay, better than I guess now that I'm where I'm at now. Rather than April, but it was a hard and scary year. Yeah.
Well, thinking about the experiences that you've gone through, what advice would you give to other artist entrepreneurs?
Hold on to your connections, and that includes if you had good relationships with professors in your college, even if you've been out like me for 5 or so years, keeping those types of connections are really important. And just your immediate community, and I think local communities right now all over the country is a really important thing to think about right now. So that's, I've got some things in the works. Hopefully I'll have some physical space in town in the next couple of years. So, there's a lot of business planning going on behind the scenes on my part. But yeah, I mean, local connections, and just the internet, as annoying as it is, and social media is stressful and frustrating as it is, in my opinion, it's also really helpful. And it's a way that we can still connect. So again, I think there's a lot of balance there. But yeah, Instagram has been helpful, but don't spend too much time on it. But reach out to people, and don't be afraid as an artist to participate in one of the virtual online shows. I did 3 virtual like craft shows, which were okay, better than nothing, gets your work out there to a few new people. And then exhibitions, if you're an artist, like for me, I do a little bit of both. I do both kind of one of a kind art and do exhibitions and things like that. And I've done some curatorial work. Or if you're just a production jeweler and you're making and you're selling, look at some online shows, galleries. People are making really cool virtual experiences. And I think, don't give up, but just see what's out there and put yourself out there. Yeah.
So let's talk more about your social media. You have several thousand followers across Instagram and Facebook. How did you reach these numbers?
Gosh, I don't even know at this point. Persistent. I've been persistent. Just figuring out it's weird. It's like nobody really knows. People talk about the Instagram algorithm, and the best time to make a post. And I guess I've definitely thought about that and done that. I find posting near lunchtime is a good time to post. People are kind of taking a break. So between our time, we're central time, so 11 and 1. But yeah, I don't know. I just editing your photos well, clean, bright images. I think staying away from the Instagram filters that actually come with Instagram as much as you possibly can. Yeah, I think good photography for your work, if you're an artist, is super important. And then for me, I show myself a lot because again, it's like I don't always talk about myself or my work as a brand. I'm more of just like I'm the artist. So this work is me, and this is what I'm creating. And I try and stay super professional, but also give people a little bit of look into my personal life, because I've always believed in being very transparent to my customers and my supporters. So that's what I've done, and I guess, it's paid off. But yeah, I've just been at it for a while. So
And you're even wearing some of your art right now. Show us.
these are some of so this pair of earrings is from a newer collection I did this past summer called the Cumulus collection. And unfortunately, I don't know if you guys can see, but they look black to me on the screen that we're sharing, but they're like a deep purple, like shimmery color. So these are from those, and they're really lightweight, but for me, and I like big earrings, so lots of fun. And then the ring and this necklace are from my floral collection. So this is the tiny floral ring in a lemon lime color with a silver band, and then this is just sterling silver tiny floral necklace. So I do powder coating in my work. Everything is hand cut and hand fabricated out of metal, and so I mostly use brass when I'm brass sheet. So just like I have scraps, but like everything comes out of like just flat sheet metal that then I manipulate or pierce out with, this is my saw frame. That's the blade, if you can even see it, that I use to cut the metal, and then various hammers and whatever. But then I do the powder coating myself, which gives you the color on top, or I just work with sterling silver. So this is a ring, and the ring itself is made out of sterling silver, and then I use what's called liver of sulfur to oxidize silver. So it's like it's a chemical mixture, but liver of sulfur is a more natural compound. And then all the little dots are brass pieces that I dapped, which means to kind of cut out a circle, and then I gave it a slight dome. And I dip that in the powder coat and then rivet. So I do handmade rivets with sterling silver that holds them in place. So these are kind of funky. Definitely consider myself more of a art jeweler. And then here's a necklace that is done in the same way. The dots are just a little bit bigger. And then the clasp is in the front. So I really like making, everyday wearable work, but then I am first and foremost an artist. My undergraduate work was more sculptural, so I definitely like to make those more essentially like you're wearing a tiny sculpture or a wearable piece of, wearable art. So that's some of the stuff I do.
Well, Brie, first of all, your pieces are beautiful. As a tech person, of course, I really like the earrings because they're purple. But what I'm also hearing too is not only are you an artist and an entrepreneur, you're into materials. There's a little bit of engineering. You've got chemical processes. It's almost like this is a science too.
Yeah, we used to joke, in college, like that we were alchemists, like moving and forming metal. I mean, that's why I fell in love with it, But so I'll take a sketch from a photo. So this is somebody's dog, a little King Charles, I think, Cavaliers. And so then I replicate and use rubber cement, and I just put that down onto the metal. So I don't know if you can see this. This is in process, but it's going to be, hand cut. So illustration, I'm kind of pulling the illustration and then the metal together to make these personal pieces. So it'll be a brooch of that person's dog. So I'll do some finishing and texturing and some more liver of sulfur to kind of bring out some dark points and some lighter points. But yeah, I fell in love with jewelry because I knew that I could pull in, one day that illustrative aspect or just continue doing it on the side. I still draw and paint. I'm trying to get more into that or see if I want to blend the two even more. But I mean, using a torch and heating up some, metal and hammering it. I used to do a lot of raising and forming, making teapots and stuff in undergrad, which I also want to get back into. It's just finding the time, but it makes you feel really, it's special. It's powerful to be like, yeah, this is made out of metal, and I was able to move it around and bend it and do all this cool stuff with it. It's totally possible. And that's why I love teaching too. So especially teaching jewelry and metalsmithing. But yeah, it is kind of sciencey in its own way.
Well, that is really cool. So, a couple more questions for you. What advice would you give to
Sure.
artists who are interested in pursuing art as a career, but they're kind of unsure or uneasy about how to get started?
Man, that is a huge question. I mean, if it's something you love, I was personally very lucky to have a supportive, uh, well, both my parents were supportive. And I know a lot of my friends had people who were not supportive. Um, and those people were extremely talented, right? It's like they just weren't supportive because art sounds like a scary thing. Well, I guess I could talk about it for a long time, like all the things, you should do, but I think just stick to it and do your research and um, put yourself out there, get uncomfortable, try different things. If you just like drawing, I think that's awesome. But as someone who used to just be someone that drew and paint, like try other mediums. Also, if you like art, but you don't like drawing, my partner is also an artist. If I he'll get embarrassed, but I love his work. He's a sculptor and he does huge pieces. And he's an artist, but he hates drawing. He doesn't feel like he's good at it. But other than that, just remember that everything people do, there's art everywhere. Designers are artists in their own way. There's different factions. So cars you drive, what you use to eat your food off of, your house, everything you touch and use, an artist has had um, their hands on it at one point in time. So there's so many options out there, and I don't think people should be afraid of going into the arts as a career choice, because I also hope and feel like our future ahead of us is going to have more room for locally made and handcrafted things. I think that it needs to happen, and we've got this like new wave coming in again of the importance of that. So I say go for it.
Well, how can our viewers support artists like yourself locally?
So locally, Cookeville, Tennessee, locally, Art Ground Tennessee is a really great organization. They put on the Art Prowl every year. That's a great way to start. We just had it virtually last weekend. So it's usually that weekend of November. So the second or third, kind of like a weekend or two before Thanksgiving. And then there's a few places popping up in town. We have a few local galleries, so go check those out. And then hopefully I'll have a place to talk about in the future in town. So keep your fingers crossed for that. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's just my name. So Brie, BRIE _ Flora. And there you can find my website, which is just brieflora.com. And it has links to, my Facebook and a couple other Instagrams that I run. So yeah, that's how you can support and follow what's going on in the world, but also locally Cookeville. So
As a local artist and entrepreneur, can you tell our viewers more what it's like to be an artist and an entrepreneur in a rural area like the Upper Cumberland?
sure. Yeah, I mean, coming from Boston, I grew up north of Boston in a town called North Andover. And then I lived in Boston for 7 years while I was getting my undergrad. And I was teaching up there for a little bit too. So I didn't, I've actually been creating my business mostly while being in a rural place, which was a huge difference from, where I studied or, closer to where I was growing up. So as busy as it is to be in a city, there's a lot to do and see and be a part of. But I was working a lot and working for other people and not having any time to save up or plan my business at all. So I actually think that, it has its perks, and everything always has a negative side too. So of course there's not as many like galleries or big museums to go to, but I think in the day and age we live right now, you can find that online, or just travel, take some time to travel. So for me, it's been really great because I was able to find a place to have a studio at home that I could afford, and So I've definitely relied on the internet for getting my work out there. But being rural has also helped me kind of focus and slow down a little bit to actually spend the time designing and creating the pieces that I've been making the past 2 years.
Well, what does the future look like for Brie, Flora?
The future. So I guess, yeah, I just want to continue building an online presence. Um, I'd love to get my work into more shows, so specifically gallery shows. Um, a goal of mine is to get something in a show that's abroad, somewhere in Europe or something. But more locally, like dream wise, I've got some business plans. So definitely encourage people to go follow me because I'm still in a lot of behind the scenes processing with that plan. So I don't really want to talk about it yet, but let's just say I want there to be some form of store in town where people can come physically say hello to me and maybe gallery. So yeah, that's future for Brie Flora.
Brie, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for being on It's Your Business.
Thank you so much for having me.